So this discussion is on the circulatory or cardiovascular system, uh, often called the circulatory system because of its job, and we'll talk about its function later, or cardio. Remember, cardiac muscle is heart muscle, cardio for heart, and vascular is a word meaning vessels. So those two terms are used interchangeably when we talk about this system of the body. Most of you probably know about the heart, heard about the heart, heard about maybe arteries, so none of this is new to you. But we're going to take a look at, in this lecture, just the parts of the circulatory system and answer a couple questions about it. As stated, the parts of the circulatory system are the heart and the blood vessels. Blood vessels consist of arteries, which take blood away from the heart. We'll talk about blood vessels in a little more detail at the end. Capillaries, and then veins, which bring blood to the heart. It is said that if you took all the blood vessels out of your body, lined them up in a row, you go around the earth about 6 times. I'm not sure about that estimate. There's many different kinds of estimates, but I know that there are a lot of blood vessels in your body. Some very large enough for you to see, like in the veins in your wrist, back of your hand, and some extraordinarily tiny, like capillaries. Functions of the circulatory system. Why do we have it? Well, if you think about this for a minute, this should become pretty evident, because you have cells all over your body, and cells, as we stated back in the first part of the year, a cell is the basic unit of structure and function of all living things. So that means a cell has to get food and oxygen. And the only way to get oxygen to your cells, well, you say, well, I breathe. Right, but that oxygen, you're too big for that oxygen to diffuse from your lungs all the way to your feet. It has to be carried there. And so oxygen to all your cells, to the cells in your brain, the cells in your feet, and all cells throughout your body. Cells also need food. We'll talk a little bit later about the digestive system, and we'll talk a little bit later about how the circulatory system gets, and we'll talk about why you need food. But you get oxygen to your cells, food to your cells, and then you have to be able to take waste away. Because remember, cells, if cells are really a living entity, they not only take in oxygen and food, they also have to get rid of waste. And so your circulatory system essentially exists to be a transport system for cells, kind of like our highway system in our country exists to, you're like, well, it helps me get around. Yeah, but when you get right down to it, it exists to transport materials, right? Get things around to people. We could live, humans lived just fine for a long time without a highway system. But your body, you have to have your highway system, a circulatory system. Now, the major organ of that system, the thing that moves all of the stuff, is the heart. Okay, and so let's talk about the order of blood flow here. And I'm going to put this up here, and then I'm going to go over this again with an animation, or with a diagram. The flow of blood essentially goes from the right side of your heart to the lungs, where it picks up oxygen. Back to the left side of your heart. From the left side of your heart, out arteries, through capillaries, which take it to the body, or arteries take it to the body, where capillaries, where we'll talk about in a little bit, and then back on veins, back to the right side of the heart. That's the generalized flow of blood. We'll skip that animation. Now here is a diagram of the heart. And if you don't have a copy of this, you should make one. And I'm going to trace the flow of blood using this diagram. I'm I'm actually going to call up all the names of the parts a minute. Okay, so you may want to pause this and write down all the names. Sup means superior. Pul is pulmonary. Anytime you see the word pulmonary, that refers to the lung. Okay, and then R and L stand for right and left. Inf means inferior. So if you're a blood cell and you're coming into the heart here at the vena cava, that would be the number 2 superior vena cava, you come into the right atrium. That's right because when you're looking at a heart in a chest, we're looking at this heart laying here, so you're looking at it backwards. Don't forget, if you lay on your back and somebody's looking at you, your right arm is on their left side. So a blood cell comes into the right atrium, moves through this valve here into the right ventricle, and it's squeezed there. The heart squeezes, and we're going to look at heartbeat in some detail a little bit later, squeezes blood into the right ventricle, and then the ventricle squeezes and pushes blood out the pulmonary artery. And it goes out the pulmonary artery to the lung. Why does it go to the lung? It goes to the lung to get oxygen. Now, blood can go either way. It can go either to the right lung, over here, or the left lung, over there. So blood comes into the right side of the heart and is pumped to the lungs. When in the lungs, it picks up oxygen. We'll look at this in a little more detail on a later discussion. Comes back into the heart on the pulmonary veins. There are pulmonary veins from the right side and pulmonary veins from the left side. They all dump blood into the left atrium. Okay, so this is if you're a single blood cell. So you've traveled now to the lungs, back into the left atrium. You're squeezed down into the left ventricle. And then the left ventricle squeezes you out the aorta. And you go out the aorta, and you can go up to the head, to the arms, or down to the rest of the body in the abdominal aorta. So that's the pathway of blood flow through the body. Apologies, it's a pathway of blood flow through the heart and lungs. So on this thing, I have a couple of questions I want you to answer regarding this for class discussion, and you're going to answer these. I've posted a forum question on Moodle. Why are there 2 sounds to the heartbeat but only 1 pulse? Why in a heart do you hear this? Da, 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 da. But when you take a pulse, there's only 1 beat. Because we use both of them to measure heart rate. And then what color is blood anyway? Is blood red? Is it blue? Or is it both? And I'd like you to give a reason for that when you answer that on the forum. So that's just something to do in response to and along with making your summary. So let's talk about blood a minute. Another major part of the circulatory system is blood. Blood has 4 parts. Part number 1 are red blood cells. Red blood cells' job is to carry oxygen. They carry oxygen using a chemical called hemoglobin. Just an interesting side note about hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is made using iron, the element iron that you can get in your diet. Maybe some of you in here are on iron pills because you were tired a lot and you took iron pills. Iron produces more hemoglobin. Hemoglobin carries oxygen, and as we'll see later, oxygen is used to make energy. The second part of blood is white blood cells. White blood cells, as we will see, fight disease. White blood cells' job is to fight disease. The third part of blood is plasma. This is the liquid part of blood. This is where things like food is dissolved in it and wastes are dissolved in plasma to be carried around the body. And last are little tiny pieces of cells. I've circled a couple of them or drawn an arrow to a couple of them on this on the picture on the left. are called platelets. Platelets' job is to help blood clot. Now, what we mean by that is to help you block an artery or vein that's been cut. Okay? So, when we say a lot of times blood clot is used as a negative term, and we'll talk about this a bit in class, but in this case, blood clotting means to stop bleeding, to keep from flowing, and platelets are in charge of that. Speaking of blood vessels, let's take a quick tour of the three kinds of blood vessels. The first kind is an artery. Arteries are large, smooth tubes that have muscles around them. Those muscles enable them to constrict, so to get smaller, or to dilate, get bigger. Now, why do they need to do that? Well, if you start running, you're going to need them to dilate, to carry more oxygen to your cells and to carry more food to your cells. Or maybe you're cold and you need to warm up, so they may dilate. This is why your cheeks get all red when you're cold, because the arteries and small arteries called arterioles in your cheeks have dilated. The smallest blood vessel is a capillary. Capillaries are very thin-walled. They're only one cell thick, and they're very narrow. Only one blood cell can pass through at a time. Why? Well, because it's here where oxygen, carbon dioxide are exchanged with cells. So those, and food, and waste. So that we have to be able to pass this stuff through the wall of the capillary, and that has to be done so they are very thin-walled, so things can pass through the wall of them. The red blood cells can only go through a capillary one at a time. They go through in a row like this, and oxygen is coming off of them, carbon dioxide is coming in, and other food is leaving. Last are veins. Veins are thick-walled. Again, they have valves in them. Their veins are pretty cool because veins are a long ways from the heart, and so if you think about it, a vein coming up from your leg, the blood has to fight gravity between pumps of the heart, and so veins have these valves in them that prevent blood from falling back. So as blood is pushed up your leg, it doesn't fall back because veins have valves. And that's a brief discussion of the anatomy and a little bit about the physiology, how it works, of the circulatory system.